Howdy folks, this is Bacon. Today we're going to be shooting a tutorial on the E.F. Johnson Armada / Viking ecosystem. So this is the radio family that superseded the 5100 and 5300. Like those, it uses a single software package to program both portables and mobiles, but it goes a little bit further than that. So Armada uses what's called the template system. You can see right here. And these templates are essentially a master code plug that can be applied to any number of radios with any UI type: portables, mobiles, VP600s, 900s, 5000s, mobiles, VM8000. Those aren't even out yet. So just to illustrate that, let's go ahead and create a new template. We're going to go ahead and use UHF 380. That's what I use for 90% of my radios. Then I will go ahead and plug in a radio. This is a VP600. Let me go over to the code plug window. So you can also edit code plugs without linking them to a template. Can edit the radio's programming parameters in its code plug completely independently. I have a single band VHF VP5000 that I maintain, or up until recently I maintained just as a code plug. I did not have a template configured for it. So then you can right click and we can link this radio that we connected to a template. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to wipe out the programming on it. But if you needed to link the radio to the template, that's how you would do it. And once linked to the template, the radio will receive all of its programming parameters except for its unit IDs for P25, DMR in the case of a VP8000 or VM8000. They do support DMR Tier 2 conventional and limited support at this time for Tier 3 trunking. That'll be expanded, but that's neither here nor there. MDC IDs, IP addresses for packet data, things like that. Anything that is unit specific. All other settings are mirrored. Now let's go back to our template. See here we have radio type, interface type. We can drop down and select any type of radio. We can run our legacy VP600s with our newer 6000s, and even say we had single band VP8000s. They can all be maintained off of the same template, which is really cool. Where you can start to run into issues with that is with the older radios, the 100 series. Their maximum firmware version is, I believe, 8.30, and there are some useful features as far as scanning, scan list alias, radio wide scan between systems, radio wide priority scan, things like that. Those are not supported by those older radios. So in practice, what I do is I have a template for 100 series radios and a template for 1000 series radios. But that's getting a little bit deeper into the weeds than we're trying to do with this initial video. So we've gone over template creation, template linking. Let's go over our tabs. So for any 5100, 5300 veteran of PC configure, this probably all looks pretty similar. So you have your higher level tabs, global, button menu, systems, zone, channel. So in global, we have general options. Here's where you're going to set up your home, surveillance mode options, your encryption settings. So just for the sake of argument, we're going to go ahead and do all of this today with VP6000s, just because they're getting to be more common on the secondhand market, and they have a lot of cool features that the The 100 series radios do not, even though I think the 100 series radios are probably a little bit tougher. They kind of feel like an Astro Saber or like a nicer, up-to-date XTS 5000. Anyways, display radio alias on startup. I like to do that. Show transmit receive icon. I like to do that as well. Infinite key retention. We want to make sure that is checked. Otherwise, your radio will zeroize itself when its battery is unplugged for more than 30 seconds. Let's not do that. Let me go into General 2. This is just for anybody using packet data services. You're probably not going to be doing that. User data storage limits. This is for audio recording and instant recording replay. So these radios have a built-in SD card, and you can set them to record both transmit and receive audio, or just receive audio. Personally, I use just receive audio. Moving forward into portable options. These are some of our ergonomic settings. Let's see, we have our low battery indicators. To use low battery beep, let's set that to 5 minutes so it's not yelling at you all the time. LED indicator, that's good. Low transmit power, that's not going to be doing that. That's dangerous. Soft power down. So this is a 2-stage power down process, so that when the volume power knob, please excuse the fans on the Quantar starting up, I don't know if you can hear that. When you place the volume power knob into the off position, you then have to press an additional button. We're going to use the side button 1 or top side button. That has to be pressed to turn the radio off. It prevents inadvertent power down events, which I have experienced with XPR 7550s. I hate those things. We have our side port settings, mic disconnect alarm. I like to have that radio yell mic detached. If your speaker mic becomes detached, keypad lockout. This is my single favorite feature of any portable radio ever. I won't buy radios that don't have it. It's like our side top buttons, our channel knob, volume knob, front keypad, toggle control. So when your radio is locked, and we'll go into how to set that up in a minute. I'm just working through the Armada workflow in the order it's presented. When your radio is locked, it will lock out all of the controls on the radio. The radio will give you a bad beep and say controls locked. You'll have access to your push-to-talk on both the radio body and your audio accessory, and access to your accessory buttons on your audio accessory, like say you're using a KMC70 or KMC72 speaker mic with a few accessory buttons. You'll have access to those. My experience has also been that even with the side top button lock option checked, it does not lock out the emergency function. So if we're using a 6000, your big orange button on top of the radio, if you have it set up for emergency, it's still accessible. Display. Here's where things start to get really cool. So these radios have a lot more display options than the 5100, and especially than the 5300, especially with the standard control head. So you can set up date format, time zone, clock source. If your radio has GPS enabled, it can pull time from GPS satellites. Otherwise, internal, you can set that when you program, or you can instruct the radio to receive a time update on programming. You can update it or set the time clock manually, or you can use system time in the case of a TRS. The way that Armada handles this, it shows you a preview of what your displays are going to look like. So your upper, that's flashing between zone and channel, is your top display. Let's go ahead and turn our status bar on. Say time, signal strength, and battery level. That's about what I like to have at a glance. We use the The same setting for the front display. Soft buttons. So for Apex users and XTS users, this will look very familiar. It works exactly the same as it does on an Apex or an XTS. So your scroll, except you have 2 buttons rather than 3. So your scroll rate shows how many buttons it will cycle through with each press of the D-pad. I like to set it to 2 so that it cycles between sets of 2 soft buttons with each button press. LED lighting, that's all user preference. Themes are user preference. I like to use high contrast, especially high contrast night. The transflective displays look awesome, especially in broad daylight. Let me get into audio. This is important. So here you can set your voice announcement for let's call them global voice events, is what EFJ calls them, and we'll call them that as well. So you can set all of this to factory default, and it'll tell you emergency on when you hit your emergency button, and turn on emergency mode, surveillance on, high power, low power, etc. Here are some of your global sound settings. So I like to turn on that 2.7 kilohertz frequency filter. A little bit of extra DSP. Enable analog noise reduction by analog. I do a lot of high noise work, so that's ideal. Auto unmute. Yeah, sure, we'll have the radio automatically unmute if it receives one of these special data calls. Audio recording mode, leave that disabled. IRR, this is great. Leave it to RX audio, number of calls. Say it'll play back our last 5 calls. So the way that'll work, I can do a video going through the UI on these radios separately if there's demand. The way that this will work is that when you press your IRR button, it will play back your last call first. See here, and you'll hear an end tone, and then it'll play back the oldest call, then the next oldest, and the next oldest, and so on. Then it'll play back your most recent call again, give you an end beep, and it'll stop. And at any time during that, you can short press your IRR button to skip that call, or long press it to exit replay mode. It's a great feature. Lists. Here we have accessories. So let's add on a Bluetooth mic. Let's just add a 7072. That's a real common mic to use. Audio profiles, microphone. This is all highly personalized. So I tend to use AGC on, especially for digital. One thing I had some serious problems with was excessively high AGC gain. Running it up like that was causing some major problems in high noise environments where all you would hear was machinery noise. So I run that at 0 or even -1 or 2 dB of AGC input gain. AGC is automatic gain control. Then we'll use our preset for our speaker mic. Do the same thing. Go ahead and drop that input gain down to 0. I like the way that sounds. Speaker. Let's see. Yeah, I don't like this at all. I tend to use 0, 5, 10, 5, 0. Just a bell curve that sort of boosts your mid-range audio, and that sounds very nice on receive. Again, this is all user preference. Test what works with your operating conditions, your hearing, your personal preference, your audio accessories, etc. And I mean, it'll sound pretty good if it's defaulted, but you can always make it sound better. Bluetooth low energy, we're not going to use that. Hardware keys, this is important. So let's create this key and call it AES1. So here's your SLN reference number, or SLN CKR. Then when you go to load your keys with your KVL, your KFD tool, or your KFM, when that product comes out, you'll map your SLN CKR number to a key ID. So then the radio will look in its memory, see SLN1, and say that's set to key ID 10. It'll be transmitting that key ID 10 with the appropriate key data. Software keys table. Yes, these do support simultaneous hardware, hardware AES, DES. I think they support hardware ARC4. I haven't looked at that very closely. They also support software ARC4. Let's call this ARC4 2. Set to key ID 2. Sure. Yeah, there's our key variable data. And we can see we can toggle key visibility. We can set a password for that. We can exclude reading the software keys from the radio on a read event or read operation. Again, that's all going to be operator preference. NAT table, we're not going to mess with that. Radio wide scan. This is a non-priority scan mode, and this is going to be something that you use more on the 100 series radios because they do not support priority scanning between different systems. The only way to scan between different systems in a 100 series radio is with radio wide scan. The list alias, you can call it, let's see, RWS list 1. It doesn't really matter. We'll go back to that in a minute. That brings us to button and menu. This is all very self-explanatory. You can select your button functions. I'll show you my default, which is backlight, power toggle, and talk around. Let's see, we have keypad type full or standard. That's one issue with the template system, is that it really only works with a single type of controls. Armada will only allow you to have a single keypad type selected in that given template for that radio model. Now the circuitry for the full keypad is still there in the limited keypad radios. I have not personally tested loading a full keypad template onto a limited keypad VP6000. However, that's not to say that it won't work. Basically, the radio thinks that your ABC keys here are the 4, 5, and 6 keys. I don't know if that makes any sense. Toggle ABCD, that's your top toggle switch. I use it as a zone rocker switch to access zones A, B, C, and D quickly. Emergency button, it's obvious. My open and closed circle button, I like to use this for keypad lockout. When this is thrown into the closed circle position, it will lock the radio controls, as we said before, with the exception of the push to talk, the emergency button, obviously the keypad lock button, otherwise it would lock it up completely, and your accessory keys. Menu, this is all straightforward. We can assign our menu items. So let's say accessory select, Bluetooth, clock, you get the idea. Aliases. You can rename any menu item or soft button item to be whatever you want. Soft buttons, same thing. So we'll have page 1 will be Bluetooth and paging or call alert. Page 2 will be clock and display GPS coordinates. This is just for demonstration purposes. And we come to our accessories page. So you remember how we populated that KMC 7072 mic? Well, here we go. And we can tell that mic what all it should be doing. I like to use this left button, this black button, as the IRR button. And say we enable scan for the center button. And the orange button is emergency. It doesn't have to be emergency. This isn't Harris. Okay, systems. If you remember from the 5100, 5300 video, I described systems as a collection of channels that are going to be using similar parameters. So here we have our conventional system. You can look at our scan hold times, display. So going to display our push to talk ID and our received key ID each for 1 second, and then those will cycle. So you'll see on receive, say unit 1 AES 1, unit 1 AES 1, and that'll cycle until the end of the call. General options. We have a few other things. They do include a P25 Roger beep now, for reasons, I suppose. I'll show our RSSI. Busy channel override is to allow you to double-click the push-to-talk to override busy channel lockout. Vote scan, that's some more advanced stuff. We can cover that in a later video if desired. We can select our keys for various data calls, specialty calls. RTT we don't use. Fire safe, that's for IDLH environments. It's not something that I've gotten into at this time. We don't really have a use case for it right now. Signaling options, this is more going to be relevant to most users. So we can set up our single tone settings, DTMF, interdigit delays, our two-tone settings, 5-tone settings if you're in Europe. MDC, that's what we tend to use for any kind of analog ANI. Show call alert decode, which is it's an analog paging or analog selective paging function. It's actually quite useful. MDC mute. So instead of getting your entire data burst, you just get a short little chirp. That's a good function to have. Side tone, I don't know if anybody uses those, but you have the option. Data services, this is for P25 packet data, backhauling, GPS, text messaging, etc. into your server or into your core in the case of a TRS. Text messaging, unfortunately, it requires use of a server at this time. There are some enhancement requests in for peer-to-peer text messaging, and when there is, I will be dropping a whole bunch of money putting it on every single radio in our fleet, because we have numerous use cases for that. Here we have our system lists, so we can program different CTCSS tones or codes or NAT codes. It's similar to the Motorola MPL or multiple private line function. If you have a few different repeaters that are on the same pair but use different tones to access, you can select that from this menu. Call lists, here's where we're going to add our unit IDs. So let's just add 2. We can say this is Unit 1 has ID 1001, and let's say Mobile 1 has ID 1002. You can copy and paste into the call list table out of an Excel spreadsheet, which is very good for managing large quantities of unit IDs. If you just have a handful, there's no need to do that. But if you're working with a system that has several hundred unit IDs, you're going to want to maintain a CSV or a spreadsheet, and then copy and paste out of that as required. Call settings, you can use this to enable, disable unit call, call alert, phone interconnect, etc. This has some applications for emissions control and air interface security, where you can disable all of these functions in order to prevent the radio from automatically transmitting in response to a non-authenticated data call. There's some vulnerabilities there. Emergency settings, we can configure how the radio behaves during an emergency event. So, say emergency alarm, that's a data call that it will transmit until it receives an acknowledgement or until it reaches its number of attempts and times out. Emergency hot mic, this will cause the radio to key up for 10 seconds after entering emergency mode. Show alert and display, so if the radio receives an emergency alarm from another radio, it'll give you this obnoxious tone. The display will turn red, the top display will turn orange, it starts beeping. It's impossible to ignore, which is the entire idea. We have assorted P25 two-tone phone interconnect. We're not going to mess with that. Priority scan. This is where you can configure priority scan. Imagine that. So the difference between priority scan and radio wide scan is that in priority scan mode, the radio will look back at an interval set by the system priority lookback time in the General 1 tab onto the priority channel. And say you're on your primary ops channel and you're scanning every 1 second during or while receiving traffic on a scan list channel, the radio will look back at your priority ops channel, just so you don't miss anything on that priority channel. Single touch, we can set the radio up to do unit call status, make a phone call, messaging, paging, etc. to a given unit when a particular key is held. That might be useful for your use case. Talk groups, we can configure all of our talk groups here. This is going to be most popular for conventional talk groups. Going to be most popular for ham operators with the way that ham P25 operation tends to be structured. Tone assignments. This is a cool feature. You can set custom tones up for a given event. Two-tone decode encode. This is for two-tone paging. Here we get into the meat of the stuff. So zone channel, let's just keep our zone 1, and we will set up an analog channel and a digital channel. So what's really cool in Armada 1.42, it introduces a table view. This was not present in previous versions of Armada. You had to navigate through each individual channel window like this, sort of like in PC Configure. But with this table view, we can go in here and let's go ahead and call this set that up for ham operation. this, say ops main, we'll put it on we will put that on a part 90 itinerant frequency. This doesn't give us the most granular control, just aliases, frequencies, talk groups. We can go back to the channel window and get our access our additional parameters here. So you want to override our talk group security settings, go to strap secure, strap that to AES1. Here we can set our NAC to whatever you need. This is the decimal NAC, and then here's our hex NAC. And then it'll automatically calculate between the two. Digital squelch can be useful. It is digital carrier squelch. Will give you all digital traffic on the channel. We have busy channel lockout, emergency settings list, call settings list. You can strap scan lists here. Let's go ahead and strap that scan list 1. We can force auto scan. We're not going to do any of that. Now we're going to jump back to the Systems tab, go back to Priority Scan, call this Priority Scan. So we'll use selected talk group or selected talkback. Otherwise, you can program the radio with the active talkback so that while you're receiving scan traffic, if you press the PTT, you'll key up on the channel where the scan traffic is being received from. I don't like doing that, but for your application it may be desirable. You never know. See, we have priority 1 is selected. We can select our scan list entries. Here you'll click use channels and use the arrow to bring that over onto the scan list. So now the behavior that we have with this priority 1 selected is that when the radio is tuned to either ops main or that 70 centimeter calling frequency, it will priority scan the other frequency. Every 1 second it will look back to the selected channel so that you don't miss traffic on that selected channel. Actually, I think this is about all that we're going to cover for this first video. We can do further videos on more advanced Armada programming, but this is just sort of the gist of it. There is a help function. It works pretty well. So you can go in and get a detailed help page for each tab on the radio, or each tab in Armada, and it will give you an explanation for a given item. So see, here's our explanation for busy channel override, keypad, keypad tones, conventional inhibit, vote scan, etc. It's all pretty much what you get on the tin. I think that should about cover it for the introductory Armada programming tutorial. Once again, guys, this has been Anarcho Bacon. Thank you very much for watching, guys.